Hey, Cesar, welcome to the Buy, Grow, Sell podcast.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure indeed. Very, very keen to unpack your story and have a bit of a chat. So I know we were just having a little chat offline before we started, but maybe just for the listeners, maybe you could kick off and just give us a little of your background and then ultimately what led to, one of the businesses we're going to talk about.
Sure. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Venezuela in South America, and I graduated as a process engineer, went to Procter & Gamble for about 3 to 4 years in consumer research and marketing for Latin America. And then being from Venezuela, when the country started going down, that's when I was 24, and I said, you know what, I need to jump ship. So I decided at 24 to get married, move to Miami, and start a business all at the same time. Because, that's what we do when we're 24. There's no risk at that age, I guess. And I'm like, what is there to lose? So I moved to Miami, and there was this gap in the market in the food industry. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start a meal delivery company, which, mind you, this is 2004. So this is pre-Facebook, pre-Uber Eats. This was very, very new. So we had a commissary kitchen where we cooked all the meals and we delivered daily to people in their office. And I had to go door to door and convince people it was convenient to have your meals delivered, kind of thing, because it was such a new market.
Wow. Yep.
But then, with time, it was healthy and delivery. So it was two big trends that were happening in the early 2000s. Yep. So we were first in market, so it was great for us. When we grew. So we started growing and and all the pains that go with it. So
yeah. And so what was the business called?
Fit to Go. So it was Fit to Go healthy meal delivery. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And so, okay, so I'm going to wind back a little bit. So you're 24, you're doing some of the biggest things that people do in their life all at once. So, so I mean, my hat's off to you because I think, anybody who can do that, I think that says something about your abilities for starters. So well done on that front. But when you started the business, I'm curious because I actually have a friend here in Australia who runs a company called Food Street, and they actually get local people in your neighbourhood. You know how it is. It could be a Sunday afternoon or something, and you've been out, you come home and you smell your neighbour's food, and you go, "Oh man, I should drop over there for dinner," right? Well, their concept is that they have local cooks, and they actually. People cook their food and they get delivered, right? So it's, home cooked meals by, your neighbours and whoever, and,
I love it.
It's healthier and so I see a lot of similarities. So, but you started this in a very different time, man.
Very different. When I arrived in Miami, Miami was a very healthy, trendy time, kind of town at the time, but they didn't have many healthy alternatives. And I think my process engineering background was more on the logistics, on the software. Let me develop this software. Let me develop these things. And I had no idea about the food industry, by the way. I was in a new country. I was an engineer in Procter & Gamble, for God's sake. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I know how to cook. And it took me a year and a half to get all the permitting done. I could not sell a meal in a year and a half. Imagine starting a business and not being able to have any revenue. So that was hard, and a lot of rookie mistakes, a lot of stuff that but then little by little, I think I had the benefit that the market was on my side. I was the first in market, and the market was growing at that point, and just being in gave me that boost. I did a ton of things wrong, hiring friends and family, not knowing the industry, not knowing even how to buy, right? In the food industry here in the States, food is 33% of your cost. People are 20%. Not even opening the door is already 52% of your costs are gone, right? So it's crazy. It's crazy. And so I had to learn a lot. Fast. Yeah.
Yeah, that's baptism by fire, right?
Yep.
So tell me, did you start the business on your own, or did you have business partners or anything like that?
Yeah, so I had a business partner who was my mom, which was a great other mistake I did, and not
Could
true,
she
not
cook
true.
though? That's
so she. The reality was this. The reality was that she knew food. She knew.
Yes.
So she was in charge of the chef, and she was a CPA, a finance. So she was a controller, so she had the quality and the finance, and I was the logistics and the operations. And I think that's what really worked in our partnership. Now, she realized that she didn't want to work. And that became an issue about a year in, and I was like giving it my all. And at the end, I had to buy her out, little by little. But she decided it was not her type of business. She was very corporate all her life, and this was too entrepreneurial. So she was not okay with the ups and lows and all these things. So at the end, I kind of bought her out really fast through me not earning enough and buying everything I made and buying her out on that. But yeah, eventually, the business after 5 years, it was fully mine. And that's when it really kicked off growth as well, when the market was growing.
Yeah. I've got a question, like the ups and downs you talk about. I mean, I think when you talk to a lot of business owners, as you do and I do, I mean, you that's a common theme, right? And I'm just curious about, the entrepreneur's ability to deal with uncertainty is often one of the key factors for them, surviving and even achieving success. And I'm curious to know, like now with hindsight, was that something that you think you already had in you, or was it something that was kind of developed because you went through that experience?
I think as entrepreneurs, we need to learn how to have all the hats. I think when we start a business, this is one of the things, like my mom was not cut out for the entrepreneurial world because she came from a corporate headspace and things had to be done with her and all the team members were perfect and everybody was at this high level capacity and all these things. And when I started the business, it was mostly like, what do I need to do? You need to roll out your sleeves and try to get your hands dirty. And if I need to cook, and if I need to come at 3 a.m. this morning, I need to cook. And if I need to deliver, I go to deliver. And if I pick up the phone, I pick up the phone. And I think that's a startup entrepreneur is little by little, you're starting to do these things and you're testing the market fit and you're testing what you're good at and what you're not good at, especially when at my age, I was 24, I had no idea what I was good at. People said,
Yeah.
I'll give you the perfect example. People said, as the owner of your business, you be on top of your finances. And my mom was really on top of that. But I'm like, let me. So when I bought her out and she moved back to Venezuela, I'm like running my finances, and I'm the worst cash manager you will ever meet. Like I was the worst finance person in my business. And I kept thinking, well, as the owner, I have to be on top of my finances. And that's not true. With time, I started realizing I need people that are smarter than me around me. I don't need to be doing everything myself. So I think that was a huge learning through the years of, at the beginning, you need to roll up your sleeve. You can't afford people. You're trying to figure it out. But once you hit market fit, you start really needing those people around you, right? And as a leader, we need to start being vulnerable and understanding what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and understanding what we need to start letting go. And just because I started a business doesn't mean I have a job in it, right? Sometimes we think that we need to have a job in our business, and I'm not the best person for this. Maybe somebody else is better positioned for this. So we start building that team,
Yeah, that's cool. It certainly takes a bit of emotional intelligence to say, hey, I might be the guy right now, but you know what? There are people who can do this much better than I can.
Oh my gosh.
And being willing to sort of hand it over and just get out of the way.
My philosophy at the time is I don't know anything about food, and I started a food business. So if I didn't know how to do it, anybody can do their. So I'm like, oh, you want to work in our kitchen? You don't need to learn how to. You don't need to know how to cook. You just come in and learn. You're like, and that was like the wrong mentality at that time. It was like, no, we need people that know what they're doing. We can't train everybody to do everything. This makes no sense. Yeah.
It's a funny one, isn't it? I mean, that is the element. I think most people who are hungry and can apply themselves will be able to learn it. But how much time do you have to train them, and how much time do you have for them to get up to speed and become efficient?
Exactly.
So, So talk to me a little bit about growth. I mean, I'm curious, about what that journey looked like.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't just put Facebook ads out anymore. So
No,
what did you do to grow the
Facebook
business?
ads. There were no Facebook ads. Remember the time, man. This is
No,
but little by little, Groupon came out, and there were many online digital. Which we were the first Groupon in Miami, and we were the first Facebook ads. Like we were ahead of most of those technology shifts, so that was good for us. But we didn't shift enough to an e-commerce as we should have. We were more brick and mortar mentality, and it took us a while to get there. But the growth period, what I realized is the more we grew, the less time I had. And I'm telling you something, I was like 7 years in. I had 37 employees. I was picking up the phones. I was delivering meals. I was cooking the meals when the dessert person didn't come. I was doing everything. And I was running like a chicken without a head. Like I was like, chicken head cut off, a dead chicken fully. And the worst part is I got hit with a class action lawsuit, right?
Oh.
And here in America, you know, that's part of the standard. And I was a fifth company targeted by a woman and an attorney. And the woman told me, you know, I've bankrupted 2 companies already. And so I'm like, I'm not giving you a dime, so I'm going to fight this. And I took my ego and I wanted to prove that I did nothing wrong. And to be honest, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because while I was going through that process, I remember it was November 2012, and I had gone like 8 months fighting it and going through all the process, and the company plateaued, and I was resentful, and my health had declined, like everything was terrible. And my business account was at $0, and my personal account was at $0. This was like a moment where I said, 8 years in business, and I have nothing to show for this because of a simple caveat that has nothing to do with something I did, but it's something that's being thrown upon me. And, you know, and I think that's where I had the huge realization of, you know, something needed to change. And and that year, I like my attorney said, like, you either settle this now or we're going to, you know, you go back to your country. And I'm like, okay, let's settle this. She got $500. That was a good thing. My attorney got like 100 and something thousand. Her attorney got like 100,000. Like it was a big deal. But that year I said, you know, I'm going to change everything here. And when I talked before about a leader and us knowing ourselves and really knowing what we're good at and what we're not, that's when I went through a purpose discovery, like a Simon Sinek why discovery kind of thing. Simon Sinek Start With Why book, And I realized most of my entrepreneurial life, I was focused on profit, I was focused on process, I was focused on product, I was not focused on my people, and my why is all about people, right? So my why was, I want my people around me to live the life they want to live life by design, and I was not doing that. And the first 8 years, I was all focused on proving that I could make this company and build this company and grow this company, and I was not focused on what I really cared about, which in my case was people. I'm all about it. I'm a twin. I'm a people person. Like I've always been an enabler and a helper, a savior, my psychologist would say. But that's when everything shifted. That year, everything shifted because I said, you know what? I'm going to stop worrying about the things I don't align with my life, and I'm going to start worrying about the things that matter. And that's when I started. I read a book called Traction, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and we started implementing that in 2012. And little by little, my team started taking ownership, and I started having more time in my hand. And then I enabled them, and I empowered them to make the decisions and grow the company. And little by little, I realized, wow, we paid the attorneys in 1 year. We quadrupled in profit. We doubled in size. And it was like, this was a key all along. What I was doing was the wrong formula. I was not aligning my energy towards what I love to do. And I was just trying to prove a point because, you know, I was a 20-something-year-old trying to prove the world that I could make it in this world. And my ego got in the way of really allowing us to grow to the point we need to grow. Yeah. The moral of the story, and I love the title of your podcast, Buy, Grow, Sell, but because I did grow, but eventually I sold to 2 of my employees.
Yes.
So this whole process allowed me to understand that this business was not aligned with what I wanted in life. I was growing resentment for this business. I was not, you know, it was not what I wanted to do. It wasn't aligned with my purpose. And that's when I said, you know what? My chef said, hey, dude, we did open management, Jack Stack, Great Game of Business, the book. We followed that to the T. It was amazing. And you know, that way all my employees knew our numbers. They knew everything they needed to do. And my chef said eventually, Cesar, you don't want to be in this business. You're rarely here. Let me buy 50% of this. And I'm like, what? I had no idea he came from money. His mom was a multimillionaire and his family, and he wanted to have his own business. I'm like, dude, I'm great with that. And eventually I sold half of my business to him. And then 2 years later, I sold to my operations manager. She got an SBA buyout loan. It's something we have here where the government gives you a loan, a very low interest rate, and that she bought me out with that.
Cool.
And then, you know, then I was I was free to do things that were more aligned with what I love to do. So,
yeah.
So I don't know. Moral of the story, I'm talking too much. I'm sorry, Simon. But moral of the story is, I think until I didn't align my purpose to my business, it just didn't click.
Yeah. Look, and you know, I think on a lot of ways, you didn't wait till you were 50 to realize that, you know, that you're 60 years old. I've not been doing what I should have been doing. Right? It's just so. It is interesting, you know. I want to take it back a sec because I'd love to get to the how you sold and some of the nitty gritty around that, because I think it's going to be interesting for people. But you talked before about proving yourself, how ego can kind of get in the way a little bit, and I relate to that. I mean, I think we were all, you know, young at one point and trying to make a mark and prove yourself. And it's quite understandable, I think, in a lot of ways too, because when you're older and you've done all this sort of stuff, you don't have to work so hard to prove yourself, because you've done stuff. Even if you've had catastrophic failures, people recognise the value in the learning behind that. So you can kind of achieve things without having to try so hard. So I mean, if you were to wind back the clock, or if you were to go back to your 5-year-old self, you know, is there some advice you'd give to somebody who's young and starting out and, you know, thinking about what they're going to do next?
Well, I wrote a book about it, right? So I think the biggest message, and I think part of my ego was my first company was such a part of my identity. Like I was not different than my company. Like me, myself, and my company were one. And what I would tell my 20-something-year-old would be, the first time is the hardest. Just get all the learning you need to right now. And then when you're ready, just go to the second, and then the third, and then the fourth. You know, so I think it's a flywheel, what Jim Collins calls a flywheel, right? So the first time it feels hard. It feels hard. You don't know shit. You don't know anything. Sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, we can say shit here. All right.
Yeah, we can.
So you don't know anything, and you're testing things, and you're learning things, and you don't know how to build a team, and you know. So I don't know what age we get into business, but your first one is going to suck, and your first one is going to be hard, and it's going to be harder, and it's going to cost more. It's going to take longer. Yeah. The reality is, the second one and the third one, the first one was just a practice round. So I think that's what I would tell me at 24, is saying, you know, this is your first go around. Don't worry about it. It's a learning experience. Just suffer, go through it, but then it'll get better. Because, you know, my second and third business, it took me 8 years to get to $1 million US in my first business. It took me 1 year to get to over $1 million in both my second and third businesses, right? So once you got the formula, once you know the system, the people, the team, yourself, you know what you're good at, what you're not, it just becomes easier.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's some great advice. So let's fast forward again here. So you started in, was it 2004?
2004, yes.
So when did you sell the first half of the business?
The first half was 2016. I sold the first half of the business,
So it's 12 years. That's a fair time.
Yep.
You mentioned this. So this guy's come out of the blue almost from you and said, "Hey, listen, you know, I'm interested in buying." So what happened from there? How did it all kind of unfold?
Yeah. So basically, we were a little giant. We were a very hyper local market in Miami. So we were at 3.2 million or something like that in Miami alone, in one location. And we were, okay, it's time to expand. So let's go to Orlando. Let's go to Tampa. Let's go to different markets. And you know, I tried to get a loan for that, and then we're food and risky, and you know, I never got the loan. So I'm like, you know what? I'm willing to spend this much, $100,000 to try the expansion, and let's try it out. So there I went, and it failed. So it failed really bad because I didn't want to put the time and energy into it. So I didn't want to move to Orlando. I just sent a salesperson, and we would do our thing. So I didn't, you know what happens, especially because the business wasn't my purpose. So what happened was, since we have open book management, my chef at the time was looking how much money we were spending on the expansion, and I wasn't there. I wasn't doing the energy I needed to do. I wasn't being accountable for what I really needed to do as a leader. And they were going like, dude, you're wasting this money and you're wasting the time. And then, you know, once we said, okay, we're at 99,000, I'm like, I'm closing it down. This is not working. And he's like, it's almost there. Like, this is ridiculous. You don't have your energy, your time in this. And since everybody was all aware of where we were, what we were doing, what the vision for the company was, he said, you know what? I love the culture. I love the company. I love what this is. You don't even want to be here. Let me just buy you out. And you become, so what we did is he became the managing partner. So he was the operational partner. And then I could go out and I was starting to speak. I was starting to teach. I was starting to facilitate. And I was teaching the purpose discoveries and the EOS implementation and all the things I had done in my business. I was teaching for others, and I loved it. And then I'm like, you know what? I'll do more of my time here. And then he was on the operations side. So that's how the first process of sale was. And in reality, we did a buy-sell agreement, and we understood what we each were accountable for. And going through the 3 C's, right? Contract, what was it? I forgot this. It was contract, control, and there's a C missing. It was contract, control. Oh, and compensation. Compensation.
Yes.
Those are the 3 C's we had to negotiate separately. And we went through those 3 C's and kind of went through it. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So did you get an advisor in to help with that sort of stuff? Was it an attorney or somebody who kind of does this stuff?
Yeah, we did a valuation. We had no idea how to evaluate the company, so we hired a company to come and do a valuation. We had an attorney who came in and kind of gave us the best practices. We didn't have an operating agreement before then because I was sole ownership. So then we developed an operating agreement. We developed and basically,
sorry to cut across you, but by operating agreement, do you mean a shareholders agreement? So was that something separate?
It was. We had both. We had a shareholders agreement, a partners agreement, and then an operating agreement. Because what we did differently, that I don't know if this is common or not, but we separated control in different areas. He had full control around operational decisions. I had full control on vision, strategy, and financial decisions. So we very much really established a line of understanding clear accountabilities of who's accountable and who has the last say on these things. Now, there were certain things that we had caveats that we had to come to a consensus on, or mediation. But I think that was one of the smartest things we did, because in reality, it got messy because he would call it the Cesar way, right? He was calling it, we've been doing this for 12 years, the Cesar way. Let's now do it this way, right? So he had full control of that.
At least he didn't say, let's now do it the good way.
Yeah, exactly. Hey. They came back to the Cesar way. They realized that they needed to come back to the Cesar way.
we all need a Cesar, so that's fair enough. Yeah, cool. Okay, so you've formed this agreement. How long did it take from, just roughly, I guess, from him saying, hey, why don't I buy in, to having it all bedded down, you're now in the new world?
So the reality is that this was a rushed buy, because I had lost so much money on the expansion, and we wanted to keep expanding, and we couldn't because we didn't have the cash. So when he proposed this, I was like, let's jump on this. So this was pretty fast. We went through like 3 months, no more than that.
Okay.
It was a cash deal, so it was easy. The valuation came very fair, and we both expected it to be around that. So we both knew what we were getting into. The second one around was a little longer.
Yeah. Well, and I'd love to come to that. So in terms of the valuation, what was the methodology that the valuer gave you or used?
I think there were like 7 levers that they analyzed.
But was it a multiple
specifics.
of EBITDA or something in the end?
Yeah, it was a multiple of EBITDA, but it was also the potential of the market and the size. Like there were several pieces there. I think at the end it was like, since it was food, and then the time we were at, I think it ended up being like three times EBITDA or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's what it was.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, that's cool. So you guys obviously came in with a sense that when the number came in, it wasn't a surprise, is what you were saying,
It wasn't.
Right?
No, we very much expected that, and we hired this whole expert, and a lot of money, and then they came back with the same number. I'm like, oh, we should have saved this money. But you know what? It was good. It was good to have that third party opinion.
Yeah.
To give you a sense of, this is what it's worth,
Well, it's independent, right? And I think nobody's going to, down the track later, say, oh, well, Cesar kind of gave me that number and, he influenced that more than I did and now I regret it, or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So out of interest, so you said it was an all-cash deal, which makes sense when they're an employee and they know the business and all that sort of stuff. Did you take your cash off the table at that point, or did you reinvest some back in the business, or what kind of happened?
Yeah, so there was a commitment on there was a percentage that had to be reinvested in the business, more towards loans, and like we paid off a lot of stuff, and then also for expansion, and then the rest was off the table. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to take home a little bit and kind of at least a little reward.
Yeah, remember when I said 0 and 0 in my bank account 2012? That needed to change a little bit. So 2016 was a good year.
Yeah. So anything's better than 0, right? So, okay, so you've done the deal. You're out there now. 3 months, quick turn, which I think also makes sense. I can understand how you're not out there searching for buyers. You found each other. What was it like after that? So it's obviously a couple of years before you divested any more shares. Did it go as planned? Did it go as you thought it would?
The first year, it went magnificent. The first year, the company grew like 36% after being established company. And profitability was really sound. I was rarely in the company. I was there once a quarter for our strategy sessions and our stuff. So it was going dreamy. Yeah. The second year, though, that's when they started dismantling a little bit of the Cesar way. And since, and I wasn't present and I kept seeing the metrics and the numbers shift, and I'm like, guys, you need to watch out for this. You need to watch out for this. And they weren't as fast reacting to what we needed to. There was a big roll-up happening as well at that time in our industry where a lot of companies were rolling up. And so we needed to either catch the wave or not. So that's when we started saying, you know what, we need to think about these things. Like, do we want to keep it independent? Do we want to be part of a roll-up? Do we want to, what do we want to do? So there were a little ups and downs on the second year, and that's when we started thinking about either him buying me fully out, which was really the first option. But then he said, you know what, I can't manage this company by myself. I need my right-hand operations partner. So it was either him buy me and then give her a portion, or me sell her a portion. So we had like 3 different options on the table on how this could manage. My 2 other businesses were growing like crazy, so I had no time to dedicate to Fit to Go anymore. So I was an absentee owner. I did not have my heart in the business. So the second time around, it wasn't so much around how much was in it for me, but what was good for the business. And the second time I sold was more around, how do we sustain this business for growth? So I was more than, it was more of an earn-out on the second time, where my operations manager got an SBA buy loan. We paid down some debts. We paid down some, they paid me some, but then most of it was earn-out through the time. So So the 2 strategies were very different. The first one was more around cash and really leveraging the position we were at. And then the second one was more of an, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. How do I get out and be out? So the second one was more about, how do I get out of this the fastest I can? So and that the business, I think, so that the business doesn't feel hurt, right? So that the business can sustain and survive.
Yeah, look, and I think sometimes with these things, it's, like a Band-Aid, right? You're better off just to rip it off quickly.
And you know what? And I think, talking about ego and identity, I think the first time I should have sold it all.
Yeah.
And I think my ego got in the way of selling it all, because I felt that if I sold it, I wouldn't be an entrepreneur anymore, or I would be giving up my business, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. Yep. And, and by selling it the first time, then I started 2 other companies that hit the ground running, and I'm like, wow, I like this so much more, and why am I doing that and wasting my time there? But and that distracted me so much that it was a disservice to the company, for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. Out of interest, the first time you sold, so you got your ops guy there. Did you guys have any kind of discussion at the time about what an eventual exit might look like, or what the end game was? What were you building for?
Yeah, I think on the first sell, we were seeing the roll up coming, and we said, you know what, 3 to 5 years, let's grow it and sell. So that was really and then I was like, you grow it, and then we sell, and I win for. So I think that was a mistake. The mistake was that, you know, he was a very operational person, and I'm more of the visionary, you know, strategic guy, and I left. So the first year it was fine because they were kind of on the coattails of the strategy, but then they couldn't adapt as fast as with the market changing. And I think that was a disservice that we did. I'm sorry, I said I should assume responsibility that I did. For the company.
Yeah. Oh, well, look, that's all right. But it is interesting. I mean, I think it speaks to the fact that there are different skill sets and positions and people that you need in that team. And, you know, I know Traction and EOS talk a lot about this, you know, who's the visionary, who's the integrator, who's the people that are going to get it done. But really, you need everybody in the boat, right? You need them. One of each.
If you have an integrator, and that's what happened to us, an integrator will fact check and reduce costs as much as you can, but they won't grow. They don't have that vision to really go to where's the market going, where's the market trending, what's the future, how do we adapt fast so that we gain that. And I think the business lost that when I was on other projects.
Yeah, no, look, I think that makes sense. So second time around, talk to me about the process again, timing. Did you get lawyers involved this time? Did you do another valuation? How did that all work?
No, we did not do another valuation. This was more about what does it take to get Cesar out? That was a valuation. So it was like, hey, get me off these loans, get me off this, and I'll do this, and then earn me out this way. So the second one was less of a process and more of it was a convenience sell. I think it was more about what's in it, what's best for the company, what's best for the new partners, and what's best for me. And we really tried to get a win-win-win where we didn't. There wasn't a compromise or there wasn't a sacrifice. We really tried to make it as win-win-win as we could.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Can you remember offhand, just even roughly, what the percentage splits might have been between any cash up front, deferred but not at risk, and an earn-out component that's fully at risk and, you know, dependent on criteria being delivered?
So the buyout loan, let me see. I would say it was like 50% went to the business, like for the sustainability of getting me off personal guarantees on certain loans.
Gotcha.
I would say like...
which is technically cash, right? Because
which is technically... They're writing me off the loan, yes.
Yeah.
Then about 20% went to business operations as a reinvestment. So it was part of the deal, but it would, we needed to reinvest in order to grow because some things were going down. Which worked, by the way. That was good. A good pivot right before COVID. And then the rest was earn out. And earn out within the next 10 years was like 30% of that.
Wow. Okay. So 10-year earn out. That's a long period. Did you? I mean, clearly at this point you're like, I don't care. I'm out. Is that what happened?
To be honest, in my mind, that is money I will not recuperate. So that earn out was 10 years or when they sell.
Yes.
So the purpose was still to sell. Now they pivoted very well and they're doing great.
Cool.
But the purpose was to sell at that point. So I'm like, well, 10 years or just when you sell, just give me this. But again, I think when we go to sell, there's a purpose for sell. So I think the win is what do we need from this sell? Do we need the cash? Do we need to get out? Do we need a like what is it that we need? And I think my other two businesses were doing well, and at that time I was like, and that was a win for the business. Whatever the business needs, like the cash flow was tight, things were tight, and I'm like, guys, let's just do a long-term earn-out, and I'm good with that. I don't need that right now, or I don't see it in the short term. So that was a way for the business to win with a transaction as well.
Yeah, but clearly you must have had confidence in those people to be able to keep the business going too, right? Otherwise, you're not going to take that on.
No. Although in my mind, it's not money I'm going to earn.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I hope they don't listen to this podcast, though. But
technically, I'm still owed this money, by the way. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Legally.
Yes, Lee. Yes.
No, it's a monthly payment. So they keep paying. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's much better. I thought you actually had to wait 10 years. I'm like, wow. Like,
no. I don't have to wait 10 years. No, it's paid off in 10 years. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's a little bit better. So as long as the checks keep arriving, right, you know everything's working.
Yeah.
And you said the business has gone on, and so is it doing well now? Has it grown beyond where it was? What?
It's pretty stable. COVID was hard in food here in the States. I think one of the things that we needed to do, which was pivotal in strategy, was becoming a black kitchen, which we call, like a dark kitchen, where we have multiple restaurants from one commissary kitchen and the whole thing. So
yes.
that shift, I didn't have energy to do that shift, so I wasn't going to do it. So that's what really triggered a lot of the change of ownership. Is I don't want to do this. Like, if you want to do that, do it. So they've been doing good. They've been doing great.
Yeah,
so that's good.
Oh, good stuff. Great. So talk to us a little bit about what you're doing these days. What were some of the new businesses that you started? Are you still running those, or have you moved on to something else?
So I started two businesses. They're both in the empowering people piece, right? So one of them is an entrepreneurship university in Latin America, all in Spanish. Latin America is like Asia, so if you don't come from a family that has a business or money, you can't really start a business. Like, it's really hard for people to get started. So it's an online university. It's called Emprendedor University, which is all in Spanish. And it's all to teach to teach professionals on how to start a business on the side, minimum viable product, and then be able to leave their jobs. So it's a very startup piece. And we have coaches around it, and we have communities around it. So it's built really well. I love it.
Nice. So out of curiosity, are you familiar with Kiva?
With Kiva, no.
Okay, so there's an entity called Kiva, Kiva. Okay. You guys really should have a chat to them about partnering. So something that I'll share my little version of this. It's not something we talk about really out there in the public sphere, but our business supports Kiva. Whenever we sign a new client, we donate money to Kiva that is used for small micro loans to entrepreneurs, usually in third world countries. And I generally will only lend into places that don't have the kind of wealth and infrastructure that we have in places like Australia and the US. Yeah. But so, I think at the moment we've got about 40 loans out there across 33 different countries. And to be honest, like our business Exit Advisory Group, we're very passionate about helping business owners. We don't market that we do this. It's not in fact, this is the first kind of forum I've ever actually mentioned this in. But we just like to do it. And our clients, our clients buy from us, we send them a note and just say, hey, listen, we want to let you know you've actually helped these other people, and it's important to us. We're not doing it for marketing juice, and we just like to let people know that they've contributed. So
I love it. It's so aligned with my purpose that I'm loving it. Yeah.
So it's a cool organization. Yeah, great
Kiva.org.
platform. And
I just found it.
Yeah, that's it. So, and anyone listening, like it's a really, really cool platform and a cool business. That's it's not a business. It's fundamentally a charity, but it's great purpose.
I love it. Yeah. So that's business number one, and then business number two is the profit recipe. So it's a firm. So we have six implementers. So it's all about implementing EOS and why discovery and leadership training. So everything I went through in my first 16 years in entrepreneurship, now we do for others. So we're based in Miami. We're 6 implementers here, and we have a firm that helps entrepreneurs evolve so that they can, they can go through that process.
It's a funny thing, and I'm interested in your thoughts around this. Like, once you've done EOS, you've done all this sort of stuff, like after a while it becomes quite second nature to you. And I presume I'm actually still sort of surprised when I go out there and people have never heard of it or other operating systems that are out there, right? I sort of feel like it's so ubiquitous because it's everywhere in my world. So do you find is that even these sort of put aside EOS as a brand for a moment, but this type of thinking, how do you find that? I mean, are you finding people are still kind of way behind the eight ball?
And so I'm writing a book. It's being published in January, and that's what the book is all about. I call it, it's a profit recipe, is how to unlock your flywheel for the entrepreneurial to live a life by design. So how do you unlock this entrepreneurial flywheel? And I talk about 5 stages, and you don't go in order, but these are the 5 stages that you go through the flywheel. Number 1 is startup, right? It's getting startup, it's market fit, it's profitability, it's scaling, it's getting that piece. Then we go into leader by design, which is how do I become a better leader? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What do I need to learn about myself? Then we go to team, where we build the right team for me and the business, whatever. But then we go to business by design. And business by design is stage 4, which is all about operating systems. Because the reality is that if you're growing the business can't depend about just the founder and the owner. You need to decentralize yourself. So you have to pick one. I love EOS because of simplicity, but there's scaling up. There's Great Game of Business. There's MAP. There's OKRs. There's so many operational systems, but a business cannot grow without an operating system because we need the owner to decentralize themselves. And then once you do, then I move it to the 5th stage, which is life by design, which is now I can start other companies that are more aligned with my life. Because now I went through that first time, and I can go there, and then you start up again, and that's why it's a flywheel. So you start up, you build the teams, you build the leadership component, you build the business component, and then you keep going on the life. So that's why I call it the entrepreneurial flywheel.
No, that's very cool, and I totally agree with you about the system. I mean, it doesn't matter which one you pick, but pick something and apply it, and apply it consistently, and you'll see the results. Yeah. But one of my friends and advisors to my businesses, he's got a great little expression that, if the owner wants a better business, well, the business probably needs a better owner. And so you've got to keep working on yourself, right? It's, that leadership by design is actually a really, really interesting part of it, right? And learning how to be a better leader, or sometimes even learning how to step back and let other people start leading. Yeah, and so,
you know what? I figured that a lot of the models that I followed are either self-awareness models, like personal, or business. There wasn't something that combined both. And entrepreneurship is really about self-awareness, ego, plus systems, teams, and stuff. So, you can't detach one from the other. So that's why, I made this model, because it just doesn't make sense. We need to incorporate both things,
Yeah. No, that's cool. I certainly look forward to the book coming out, and I'll be sure to grab a copy and have a read. It sounds really great. And I think for those people listening at the moment who sort of wonder where to start with some of this, it's for what it's worth, I'm happy to share what we do as well. But whenever we bring somebody into our firm, we talk about leadership across the organisation. Now, they might not be managing anybody, but leadership starts with yourself, right? Yeah. You've got to be a good leader of you before you can be a good leader of others, and then 100%. Be a leader of groups and divisions and whatever. So it's, hey, it all starts here. And you mentioned Simon Sinek, which I think he's, fabulous. That whole, if you haven't seen his YouTube video on why, I mean, talk about, 11 or so or 18 minutes that'll change your life, right? Get to the why of everything. It's, that's cool. Cesar, I reckon I could talk to you all day, but that's mate. I'd like to maybe ask you if there's one tip or one piece of advice, maybe that you want to leave with the audience. But before we do that, are you happy for people to reach out and contact you and connect?
Yeah, sure, of course.
No, please. Where's the best place?
So our website is theprofitrecipe.com. That's profit as in profit, as in money, not as in not as in preacher, but theprofitrecipe.com. And my LinkedIn is Cesar Quintero, so I'm here in Miami.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, look, we'll put some links in the show notes. And I constantly say on this show, if you do reach out to Cesar on LinkedIn, please put a little note there. Maybe let him know that you heard him on the podcast, so it's not this random weird connection. So, Cesar, I really appreciate it. This has been great. I think, your story is something that a lot of people will be able to resonate with. And, I think there's a lot of great tips and lessons in there. Is there one piece of parting advice or a tip or anything like that you'd like to leave people with?
I would say what I tell everyone is know your why, know your purpose. And once you know it, align every decision, business, team, where you spend your time, everything around what makes your energy great. Because I truly believe entrepreneurship changes the world, but that only happens if your time and energy is spent where you're great at and what you love to do. If not, it's not even worth it.
Yeah. Fabulous advice. Cesar, thank you so much for sharing and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Simon. Great being here.